I always thought certain things only happened in movies, like meeting someone in one of those huge corner cafes in Manhattan. But it was exactly there one afternoon that I literally bumped into, the man I thought would be my future. I was rushing out, trying to balance a cup of coffee while holding my phone between my shoulder and cheek, listening to one of my mother's endless messages. He opened the door at the same time I tried to leave, and in the confusion, half the coffee ended up on the floor and the other half on my coat. He apologized about 15 times, offered to buy me another coffee, and I accepted more because he insisted than because I actually wanted to stay. But when he smiled, I thought, great, it's going to be hard to leave now. His name sounded formal, and when he told me where he came from, everything clicked. Parents married since forever, a big house in a quiet New Jersey neighborhood, Sunday dinners, prayers before meals, family albums neatly organized by year. It was almost funny to hear all that because it felt like it belonged to a world I had never stepped into. My family was something else entirely. I grew up in a small house in a tiny town in Florida. My parents divorced when I was 16, in a fight so ugly that to this day I'm not sure who started it or why. My mother spent years juggling 2 jobs. My father moved to the other side of the country, showing up only on alternating holidays. The rest of my family was a mix of cousins who married and divorced like changing clothes, aunts who fought about politics every Christmas, and an older brother who promised this time it'll work in every relationship he had, and it never did. I grew up thinking perfect families only existed in butter commercials. So when he started telling me about his childhood, summer trips to a lake in Pennsylvania, birthday parties with huge tables, perfectly synchronized smiling photos, I almost laughed. Not at him, but at the idea that someday I'd fit into something like that. At first, that contrast seemed like just a curious detail. He thought my chaos was funny, and I thought his organized world was cute in its own way. I would tell stories about my family's chaotic arguments, and he'd listen with wide eyes, like he was hearing reports from another galaxy. He laughed when I imitated my mom saying, "I'm already tired before I even get out of bed," and I'd smile when he showed me pictures of family gatherings where everyone looked like they had stepped straight out of a catalog. I remember the first time I visited his apartment. Everything was quiet, tidy, not a single mug out of place. His shirt was folded with almost military precision over the chair in his bedroom. And when I realized I was noticing these details with a strange feeling I couldn't explain, I understood that the difference between us wasn't just cultural, it was structural, deep. But back then, I had no idea it could ever become a problem. All I thought was, wow, it feels so good to be with someone who grew up with this kind of peace. I didn't know yet that his peace came with invisible rules, and a fixed idea of how life should be, and of how I should be. In the beginning, everything seemed simple, or at least simple enough for me to ignore the uncomfortable warning that popped into my head from time to time. Do you really fit into this world? I kept pushing that question away. I was too in love. He held my hand. I laughed more. I slept better. I made plans without fear. Every date felt like a little break from my fast, messy life. And for a while, that was enough. The decision came almost naturally, like the logical next step after so many nights when I ended up sleeping at his place. He offered me the key, saying something like, "This way you don't have to keep choosing what to bring in your bag every time." And I accepted too quickly, maybe because it sounded like commitment, like future, like stability. Things I had always wanted, even when I pretended I didn't. The apartment where we began sharing our lives was in Hoboken. I remember moving day, boxes stacked everywhere, my heart racing, the smell of fresh paint because he had insisted on repainting the bedroom. He helped me organize my books, placed my favorite mug on the kitchen shelf, even cracked a joke about how my shoes would take up half the closet. Everything felt light. But from the moment my things crossed that door, I realized I wasn't just moving into his life. I was moving into his world. His family became a constant presence. Not invasive at first. It felt more like a warm circle he swore he wanted me to be part of. Sunday lunches at his parents' house in Montclair, quick calls from his mother asking if we were free for dinner, messages from his sisters inviting us to nieces' birthdays, high school football games, church events, that kind of routine that looked straight out of a movie about perfect families. In the beginning, I actually liked it. It was new to me. The feeling of belonging, of being included in traditions I never had. I made an effort, brought desserts from the bakery on the corner, helped set the table, asked polite questions about his father's job, and for many weeks, it seemed like I was doing well. But slowly, the small comments started. The kind you laugh at in the moment but keep scratching inside for hours afterward. I remember one of those early family dinners. the huge table, the smell of roasted chicken, kids running around, his mother offering me more mashed potatoes as if it were mandatory. One of his sisters mentioned that some woman, a friend from church, had met her fiancé, fallen in love, and in barely 2 years they were already planning their first child. His mother sighed and said, "It's so beautiful when a woman knows what she wants in life." I didn't realize it was an indirect comment until I saw his father lean back in his chair and ask, "And what about you two? Do you plan on getting married someday? You've been together for so long?" My boyfriend didn't answer. He just laughed, changed the subject, and squeezed my knee under the table as if that fixed everything. I laughed too. It felt easier than admitting the truth. That question went through me like an arrow. Suddenly, I wanted to ask him about marriage, but I was afraid of sounding needy, anxious, dramatic, and that pattern began repeating itself. The questions about marriage came from others first. Then eventually, they started coming quietly from him too. Not directly, of course. He'd say things like, "When I'm a dad, I don't want to miss any of my kids' baseball games." Or, "My mom always says it's important for a woman to know how to balance home and career." Or, "My dad thinks it's admirable when a family stays united and traditional. He's always admired couples who build everything together." But no matter how I tried to ignore it, the discomfort grew. With every lunch, every comment, every time he smiled when someone asked about marriage and didn't look at me. I could have asked back then, demanded a clear conversation. But I was too busy trying to be the viable option, too busy proving I could be part of that world, so I left it for later. And that later would cost me dearly. I think everyone, at some point in life, goes through that kind of conversation that changes the air in the room the moment it begins. For me, that conversation happened on an ordinary night. I was washing the dishes after dinner. He was sitting on the couch with the TV on at a low volume. I could feel him watching me in silence. And for some reason, that posture, it gave me the same feeling I used to have as a teenager when my mother said, "We need to talk," in a voice that was way too calm. I took a deep breath, dried my hands, and walked over to him. Do you really picture yourself marrying me someday?" He took far too long to answer. Then he exhaled slowly and said, "I love you, you know that. But I still can't think about marriage." That sentence already hurt, but it wasn't the worst part. I tried to argue calmly. I asked what was stopping him. He talked about his career, about wanting to be more established, even though he had been in a stable position for years. I talked about building a life together, about planning, about not wanting to rush anything, just wanting to know if we were walking in the same direction. And that's when the conversation started sliding into a strange place. "I think maybe the problem isn't the timing," he said. "Maybe it's the idea itself." "The idea of what?" I asked. "The idea of marriage. With you." My first reaction was a short laugh, the nervous kind. He continued, "It's just that you're amazing. Really. I love being with you, but sometimes I wonder if the two of us fit for that kind of thing. For marriage." "What do you mean, that kind of thing?" He started listing traits of mine as if he were evaluating a resume, that I was too spontaneous, too social, too open, too independent. I felt like I was listening to a stranger. "But you always loved those things about me," I said, trying not to cry. "You always told me you loved the fact that I'm like this." "And I do," he replied quickly. "But loving your personality and marriage are two different things." In that instant, I felt something break. He was telling me he loved me, but he was also telling me I might not be the kind of woman he imagined walking down the aisle with. His love had a frame, a specific shape I didn't fit into. I tried asking what exactly he thought I lacked. He talked about values, lifestyle, family compatibility. 3 expressions that sound neutral on paper but felt like doors closing, one after the other. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment. And even then, I stayed there sitting beside him, trying to understand, trying to stitch together some meaning. Part of me kept repeating, if he loves me, I can fix this. Another part, smaller and more honest, he doesn't love who you are. He loves who he wished you were. It was the first time I truly felt fear inside that relationship. Not fear of him, fear of how much I was willing to sacrifice just to not lose him. And later, I learned that was a warning. Because that night, even knowing something had broken, I said I wanted to try to work things out. I offered solutions. He said he needed time, and I gave it. I gave time, space, silence, adjustment. I gave everything, except the one question I should have asked at that exact moment. And what about me? Have you ever thought about who I want to be? I didn't ask that question. After that conversation, something inside me switched into survival mode. I didn't notice at the time. I thought I was just trying, doing my part, showing that we could find a way through the mess. But looking back, I can see so clearly what I did. I turned myself into a renovation project. It was subtle at first. Little things. Things no one notices right away. Not even the person who's changing. I started swapping my clothes for family gatherings. I put away my bolder dresses and wore high-neck blouses, dark pants. Clothes that felt like I was wearing another woman. And no one asked directly. But when his mother gave me an approving smile that first Sunday, I understood the entire message without needing subtitles. At the church services his family attended, I tried to follow along. Everything was new to me. The choir, the sermon, the repetitions, the slow rhythm of the prayers. I tried to act like someone who understood that language, but really I just stood there hoping I didn't look out of place. He held my hand on those days with that gentle gesture that always disarmed me. And when someone said, "It's so beautiful to see you two together," I smiled like I was having a special moment. But inside, I felt a sting of guilt, like I was fooling everyone, including myself. The changes didn't stop there. Then came the Sunday dinners. His father liked to serve the food exactly at 6 o'clock. His mother always offered me something to help with, and I started accepting because I wanted her to see that I was someone who made an effort. Soon I was chopping vegetables beside her, listening to her talk about how a home stays alive through the woman's care. I started cooking recipes that weren't even mine. I read blogs, watched videos, discreetly asked how she seasoned this or that. Sometimes I felt like she looked at me with something between approval and relief, as if thinking, finally she's getting it. In public, I began measuring my laughter, my tone of voice, what I commented on. I avoided talking about my job with too much enthusiasm because to his family, too much passion for a career sounded like misplaced priorities. I avoided spontaneous physical affection because one of his uncles once joked that clingy couples never last. I avoided making the jokes that used to make him burst out laughing, because I learned some people there thought I talked too much. It was as if I had stepped into a role everyone expected me to play flawlessly, and he seemed to like it. I'll never forget the first time he commented on the way I was dressing. We were heading to a dinner at his parents' house, and he said, "You look so elegant like this. My mom is going to love it." It was meant to be a compliment, but I realized he wasn't complimenting the way I liked to dress. He was complimenting that I was learning how to fit in. And still, I kept going. I kept trying because I thought maybe this effort would bring me closer to the future I wanted. I kept going because I was afraid of losing someone I loved. But the more I drifted from who I was, the emptier I felt. I remember one specific night. We were leaving his parents' house, walking to the car. He wrapped his arm around my waist and said, "You fit in so well today. It was perfect." That perfect made me nauseous. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I knew I hadn't been myself. I had performed. That night, while he drove in satisfied silence, I thought, if I keep going like this, how long until I disappear from myself? But the next morning, I woke up, put on another high-neck blouse, applied light mascara, and followed the script. Update 1. After that period of quiet changes, something started building in the air. He seemed to be evaluating everything, not out of malice, but expectation, as if I were being tested for a job position. And one day, that weight exploded. Not in a fight, not in yelling. I still remember exactly how it felt when I saw his mother's full name appear on my phone screen. When the phone buzzed, I thought it was a group message, some last-minute invitation, something normal for a family that lived practically glued together. But it wasn't a message. It was a call, and I answered. Her voice was too soft, too polished, with that rehearsed tone of someone who already knows exactly what they're going to say and is just waiting for you to show up. "I really wanted to have lunch with you today. Just the two of us. I think it would be important." I asked what it was about, but she sidestepped it gently, saying it would be good for us to talk calmly. I agreed, because I felt like I couldn't refuse, because part of me thought maybe that would be the moment she finally saw me as a real person and not as some strange piece trying to fit. I was wrong. The restaurant she chose was one of those places that looked almost too put together. She arrived before I did, of course, sitting with her hands folded on the table, posture impeccable. And when she saw me, she smiled in that way that almost fooled me. After we ordered, she took a deep breath and began a speech that had clearly been prepared for years. "I want you to know that I've always respected you, but I've also always had concerns." I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. She went on. "You're very different from the women in our family. That's not necessarily bad, but it's a shock. From the beginning, I felt that your values were different, The word values hit me right in the stomach. You always seem to think more about your career, your own goals. That's admirable, for some people. But for the kind of life my son wants, it can be complicated. My son. The ownership hidden inside the words. I tried to stay composed. I also noticed that during visits you seemed disconnected from the family. You talked a lot about work, very little about us. You didn't show interest in our traditions. That was concerning. I wanted to interrupt her, to say she was being unfair, but she didn't stop. I know you've been making an effort lately. I see that, and I think it's lovely that you're trying. But it doesn't feel natural. I sense it's a temporary adjustment. I swallowed hard. She looked at me with an expression I briefly mistook for compassion, but then I realized it was only certainty. Honestly, dear, you need to think about whether you're willing to live this way for the rest of your life. Because my son wants someone who fits naturally without needing to transform. And in that moment, everything clicked at once. The way he told me he loved me but seemed to measure every part of who I was. The nights he went quiet after family gatherings. The way he repeated opinions that clearly weren't his. And there, at that perfectly set table, I understood something brutal. I had never been just his girlfriend. I was a candidate for a position. And the entire family was on the evaluation committee. I don't remember exactly what I said in response. I think I thanked her for her honesty. I think I forced a smile. I think I made mechanical comments to end the conversation politely. What I do remember is stepping out of the restaurant. And for the first time since everything began, I felt certainty. This wasn't a competition I was losing. It was a competition I never had a chance to win. Update 2. When I got home that afternoon, he was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone, as if he were waiting for an important message. Are you okay? I wanted to say no, that I was shattered, that I had finally understood what had been happening from the beginning. But instead, all I managed to say was, we need to talk. He turned off the TV, set his phone aside, and took a deep breath. Like he knew the moment had arrived. He was ready to defend his family, to downplay whatever had happened. But it wasn't about that. Not anymore. I don't think we can keep going, I said. No embellishment, no hesitation. He froze. What happened? He asked. I couldn't answer right away. I could have said, your mother told me she never saw me as suitable. Or, I realized you've all been evaluating me for years the way people evaluate a project. Or, I finally saw that you want a wife shaped by them, not a partner. But in that moment, none of that mattered as much as what I already knew inside myself. I can't keep changing who I am just to fit into a place where I was never truly seen, I said. You're overreacting, he said. Every family has expectations. Every relationship takes effort. You're taking this way too far. I did everything I could, I replied. And you saw it. You praised it. You celebrated it. But I was erasing parts of myself so I could fit a mold I never chose. I can't do that anymore. He stood up and started pacing around the room, restless. So that's it? You're going to throw away our years together because my mother said something you misunderstood? It's not about her, I said calmly. It's about you never defending me. About you looking at me and thinking I'm good for now but not good enough for a lifetime. That sentence finally hit him. I just wanted to be sure, he murmured. Marriage is a big deal. I didn't want to make a mistake. Hearing that hurt more than any criticism. You only picture a mistake with me, I said. From that point on, there was no going back. Ending a life built together is cruel. The emotions are devastating, but the practical part, that destroys you in a different way. Walking through the rooms, choosing which objects were mine, which were his, which were ours. Seeing my clothes in closets that once felt made for me. Taking photos off the wall, folding clothes that still smelled like him, throwing away matching toothbrushes. I did all of it in silence. He tried to stop me several times. We can talk again, he said the first night. I can try to change, he said the second. I don't want you to go, he pleaded on the third. But in none of those attempts did he say the one sentence I needed, the only one that would have mattered. I choose you the way you are. A week later, my bags were packed. It was raining. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, unable to step inside, unable to step away. It doesn't have to be like this, he insisted. We can try. We can take it slow. I was thinking about proposing in a few months. I took a deep breath. You only thought about that because you felt you were losing me, I said. And marriage out of fear isn't a choice. He didn't deny it. His silence was my confirmation. When I finally left the apartment, carrying 2 suitcases and a big box that barely fit through the door, I felt an enormous emptiness, but also a kind of relief. The first weeks alone in my new apartment were strange. Not sad, strange. I didn't have enough furniture, slept on a mattress on the floor for days, ate frozen meals. He texted almost every day. Some messages were long, others short. I miss you. Can you come talk? We can try again, for real. At first I replied politely, then only with brief acknowledgements, and eventually I stopped replying, not out of anger, out of necessity. His silence, when it finally came, was an unexpected relief, and slowly I started living again. I became friends with neighbors. I bought a used table online and assembled it by myself. I spent more time alone, with myself. I thought I would never hear his voice again. After I moved out, after he stopped insisting, after his life went one way and mine went another, it seemed impossible that our paths would cross again. My life moved on, until that day. The call came on a Tuesday around 7 in the evening while I was driving back home from work. The number was unfamiliar. Usually I don't answer unknown calls, but at that moment I was expecting a call about a project, so I slid my finger across the screen without thinking twice. And then I heard, "Hey, it's me." It was less than 3 seconds. A shiver climbed from the back of my neck down to my chest. Not nostalgia, but memory. I stayed silent. He tried to laugh. A short, awkward laugh. "I know this is weird, but I just needed to talk to you." I pulled into an empty pharmacy parking lot, turned off the engine, and took a deep breath. I asked what had happened. "I got married," he said after a few seconds. "I married the woman from our church, the one I told you my mom kept encouraging me to meet, the one my family, well, you know, I knew. I had heard it from his sister years ago when the breakup was still fresh. I knew everything had happened fast, approved, celebrated. Almost like an automatic response to everything his family had always wanted. And it's over," he continued. "It ended in a way I never imagined. She cheated on me, with a guy she met in the prayer group. It was devastating. Hearing that affected me, but not in the way he probably expected. He had gone after the right woman, the one who fit the mold, the one who didn't need adjusting, the one who came with the approval seal printed on her. And even so, the castle fell." He took another deep breath before continuing, and I kept thinking about how you never did anything like that to me, in the 7 years we were together, about how I lost you. I listened silently, and he filled the silence. "I wanted to see you, just talk, maybe grab a coffee. I feel like I left something unfinished between us." I felt my heart beat slow with a strange kind of peace. It wasn't anger, it wasn't joy, it was just clarity. "That's not possible," I said. "I'm married." "You got married?" "Yes, I got married last year." For a moment, he tried to hold himself together, adjusting his tone like someone who wants to appear steady while falling apart inside. "I see. I'm happy for you," he said. It didn't sound like a lie, but it did sound painful. I told him I hoped he would find peace too. That rebuilding after something hard is possible, even if it takes time. The conversation ended without drama, just a quiet, sad little, "take care." And that was it. I hung up, sat there in the car, and thought about everything. Who I used to be, who he needed me to be, who I am now. And I realized one simple, enormous truth. I had spent years trying to be chosen by someone who never saw me completely. And when I finally chose myself, I found someone who could see me fully without needing to adjust a thing. After that call, I thought the chapter was closed for good. But life always saves one last chapter for certain cycles. It happened a few months later, on a Sunday evening. My husband and I had gone to an outdoor fair in Princeton, one of those places that sell crafts, homemade sweets, and coffee that somehow costs more than it should. That's when I felt a stare, and it was him, standing near a food truck, holding a cup of lemonade, wearing a simple jacket. He wasn't moving, as if time had stopped just around him. His face, I can't explain it. He looked tired, older, not in age, but in weight, his eyes locked onto mine. My husband was talking about trying some cookies. He didn't come closer. He just stared at me. A long stare, full of questions, full of regrets, full of unresolved things that were no longer mine to carry. It was as if he were trying to guess the life I had lived without him. And then, suddenly, someone came out from behind him. It was her, the same woman who, according to what he told me on the phone, had destroyed their marriage with a devastating betrayal. The same woman he used as justification to reach out to me. She didn't look like any of that. She held his hand naturally, like she had been doing it for years. No tension, no distance, no awkwardness of a couple trying to reconcile. It was pure intimacy. not a life in ruins. And then she kissed him. A quick kiss, every day, sincere. There was no bitterness, only routine. In that second, the truth hit me all at once. He had lied. About everything. Every detail of the betrayal story. Every word of the call he made. Every piece of the drama. He wasn't divorced. He wasn't broken. He was testing. Testing whether I would still feel something. And now the living proof of his manipulation stood right there in front of me. His current partner, or ex, or whatever label one could use, looked at me briefly. She had no suspicion. No idea about the theater he had staged weeks earlier. He, however, looked frozen, as if my gaze had exposed his entire lie, even though I hadn't said a word. His face went pale. I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. Right before turning the corner, I couldn't resist and looked back. He was still standing in the same spot, staring at me, lost in what could have been, lost in everything he only valued when it was no longer his. I didn't lose anything. I escaped, and he never realized that until the very last moment, when there was no return left at all.